Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing?
Doing great. You know the second test run?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's going much better.
And that giggle was our guest host, Veronica Rose, is on the podcast tonight.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Welcome back.
Good. I just don't know how to introduce people anymore because everybody's reoccurring. Like they know these people now, so I don't feel like I'm introducing someone and I'm just like, hey, this person's here too.
Yeah, and we're happy to have you back, and we're not talking Arrow.
Hey, I appreciate it. I need a little Arrow break.
I just feel so ignored for my little state. Whatever. So
don't get me wrong, I still love this show and I still love the characters. I'm just kind of at a point right now where talking about it is like the least favorite thing to do.
But they haven't done anything. Like
no, not because of the show. No, the show's great. I'm having fun with it. It's just Fandom is killing me, man. It is killing me. So I'm just gonna take a nice little big step back.
Fair enough. Yeah, that happens on the Flash as well. It's just like everybody's just ranting about story and decisions and things about the show, and it's just sort of like, all right.
I think when a show gets like a huge fandom, a lot of different types of personalities clash within the fandom. So it can create kind of this like huge mushroom cloud of like emotions and dramatics, and people kind of get too caught up in the fighting and the arguing and the debating that they kind of lost, you know, the whole point of fandom and coming together to discuss like the favorite show, and it becomes let's attack each other personally. Yeah. So, and it happens with everything, like every fandom.
It hasn't gotten to the level where people are personally attacking one another. It's just more, it's just, everyone is just like excessively nitpicking. And we nitpick too, but I just feel like just enjoy it for what it is, and don't, this is mid-level, show, not like War and Peace or anything like that.
So weird.
Yeah.
I don't know, but just something, it's not supposed to be deep. It's just like enjoy it for what it is.
Exactly. It's supposed to be an enjoyable show. It's a superhero fictional show. And it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to, leave you with cliffhangers and leave you with characters that you probably are not going to like. And it's cool, and it's okay to hate those characters and love those characters and hate that storyline and love this storyline, but it's to the point where in a lot of, and it's not just Arrow, because I'm seeing it in a lot of different fandoms, where people are starting to attack each other for liking this type of character or that particular storyline, or not liking the storyline, and it's almost like, oh my god, you people who like comic books, you're so stupid because it's just, and I'm like, okay, wait a second. Just because somebody likes comic book doesn't make them like, less likely to be a fan of a TV show that it's based off of. So I'm just saying. But yeah, so I've had to take a little step back from fandoms in all the shows that I enjoy, and kind of just focusing right now on like enjoying the shows. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You sound like me in 2016. like you're still technically a baby in the Arrow fandom because you didn't immediately get on board. Mm-hmm. So I went through that kind of like, oh, this is really the deep dark secret behind, like, let's all come together and talk about our favorite shows. No, this is high school still. And you have to like the same things and appreciate the same things, and and you're exactly right. Like, it surprises me because I've been very removed from it for a while now. But it surprises me to hear you say that, to go back to that divide, which existed a few years ago too, and I think will always exist. Are you a comic book reader or are you not? There's a stereotype associated with that and it's from what I heard you just say, it sounded like, okay, everybody's just attacking the comic book readers, but I come at it from a perspective of I didn't feel like I could be included in these conversations because I never read comic books. Like I only know the characters from what the shows tell me, and then I read things online and I hear bits and pieces from other people and I put all that together and I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting story. I'm not going to go and buy a comic book. That's not my medium. That's not how I enjoy storytelling. So it's just, it still amazes me how it's been a few years now and yet that still divide is occurring, and causing people not to come together, but really just still distinguish themselves. Like, well, now it's cool to be a nerd, so everybody's a nerd. Well, now we have to be like, you're a comic book nerd, or you're a movie nerd, or you're this or that.
Yes. I saw a great thread about that, and how it used to be, and it really touches on some of the things we're going to maybe talk about tonight. It's being that outsider, and whenever we were all nerds, and it was frowned upon or you're picked on and those kind of things. And now it's like nerddom is it has become an industry, and it's because of the umbrella getting much larger. And more people getting into the fandoms, you do see that divide, and the very thing that what made us all special and unique to begin with, where we used to celebrate that, now it's become a very divisive thing, which is just very unfortunate.
Yeah, it's so true. I see it right now with a lot of the Umbrella Academy comic book readers and the TV show fans who never even heard of the comic book. I'm seeing a little bit of that kind of animosity between the two groups. And it's kind of sad because, one of the things that I read recently that Gerard Way had mentioned was that the comic book is going to be the comic book and the TV show is going to be the TV show. There's going to be a difference. And there's a lot of logistics involved when you're trying to base a TV show off of a comic. And things change very rapidly in the world of, TV making, and things get changed. I mean, the writers are on set half the time, and in a flash, they have to be ready to change the script, like whole pages worth. So, people can't expect that the comic book is going to be, or the TV show is going to be the exact same thing as the comic book. And that's another part where comic book fans need to try to kind of understand and relax a little bit, that it's never going to be the same. I mean, we've all known for ages that TV and movie adaptations of books and comic books are never right on. And that's why people are always like, oh, the book is better. But yet we still have people arguing this. And I'm just like, oh, can we just enjoy it? Like, it's so much fun if you just enjoy it.
Well, I mean, if you don't like the product,
right?
I mean, I guess I just, it's one thing to enjoy something, but if you also find the flaws, because if we're going to talk about it, Umbrella Academy, I actually am a little bit different than Will, because I enjoyed the first 5 episodes and then I just got so bored with everything and I figured out the plot. I was like, oh, I see where this is going. And it bothers me because it made me, not like any of the characters. The moment I realized where everything was headed, all I could do was sit there and be like, why are they acting like this is such a big mystery? Oh yeah, because they're self-centered assholes.
Exactly.
And that makes me not like any one of them, or for me, made me not like anyone. And I'm just like, this is stupid. Like, really just bad. And I just, by the end of it, I'm like, oh, the world's ended. Thank God.
And I'm the complete opposite, because I enjoyed the flaws. I enjoyed the snark. I enjoyed them being a bunch of assholes to each other and in general. Like, I love that kind of stuff. That's just the type of person I am, that I enjoy. Like, I don't need them to come together and save the world. Like, you know, screw it. If I can do it on my own, I'm going to do it on my own. You know, I enjoy, like, I enjoyed each of their stories and how they kind of came about. And I think of all the characters, like, number 5 and Klaus are my favorite. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I was hooked from first episode to the last episode. Like, all 10 episodes I watched in, like, probably within a matter of 30 hours. You know, give it 5 episodes and took a break, and then another 5 episodes. And I was hooked. I'm totally hooked, and I'll probably watch season 1 again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, I enjoy Stark, and I actually thought that actors themselves had really good chemistry when they were all in the same room together, especially, like, their family dynamics are really good. And that wasn't my problem. My problem is the overall structure of how they decided to tell this story, which it's one thing thinking, like, okay, they're all, like, not seeing it because they want to be at the end of the day, the hero. But some of them it wasn't about the hero. Like, that competition, I think, was more between 1 and 2, and everybody else was just trying to figure out why they were special or kind of fearful of their powers.
Right.
So it just didn't make sense to me why I just lost interest in watching these people make stupid decisions, like, very blatant stupid decisions. I'm like, really, guys, you haven't connected? Okay. It's so obvious to me, but like, and for me, one of the plot points that I really did like, and I thought I wish there was more of, was I like all of the stuff between Luther and Diego. Like, that brother relationship was really interesting, and and that's another one of my complaints. I wanted more of that. Like, I wanted to see that more with the sisters. And really my biggest issue was the villain, cause he's really lame. Like, I'm like, really? You guys just decided, like initially when they told the story about, like, he was born on that same day, except he was from a natural birth. So he doesn't have the powers. He's not special. So he can make that connection with number 7. But still, he just was so slimy.
He really was.
I'm just like, you're a creeper. Radar isn't going off, really? Your sister sees it.
Yeah, the thing is about the show kind of rang true to the way the comic kind of plays out, because the comic is really weird, and it comes from a place of, like, chaos almost, and so I think maybe I haven't read every single series within the Umbrella Academy. I know the first, when he first came out with the series, and it was only supposed to be a limited series before they decided they wanted to kind of stretch it out, because it had such, a good, call for it, but it kind of, like, it just kind of a dark and twisted, and, like, I felt like in order to try to fit all of the stuff into the first season would have just been too much, that they had to kind of introduce these characters so that when the next season comes in, then they can start focusing on, because, with Luther and Diego, I mean, that alone could take up a whole season. And then as far as the sisters, their backstory, that again could also take up a whole, season. Vanya alone. So for me, watching this first season, it was just an introduction. The entire season is literally an introduction.
Okay.
And the way that they ended the season, I feel like next season we're going to start with them as kids again, and we're going to slowly start getting more into it. That's just what I'm, in my head, I've got thinking that they're going to do, because it was chaotic. But it was, to me, it was like, okay, let's give you all this quick little introduction, and then when we come back, next season we're going to show you what they're really about.
Okay, Will's not going to say anything, so.
No. I was
like, I have a response to that, but I also want to make sure Will knows he can talk if he wants to.
No, I was just taking into the conversation at first because I haven't finished the story, all the shows. I did, I was fine. I just read ahead as far as see what happened. And I guess for me, I know we're going to talk about this show later, tonight. I watched Doom Patrol first before watching Umbrella Academy. So without getting too deep in our discussion about Doom Patrol, I felt, the one thing I will say is, I felt like I had watched this story before, and so when I started Umbrella Academy, I was like, oh, I've seen this, and I think I like the other version better. But that being said, and I told Sarah this whenever I messaged her over the weekend about this, when I finally started, I was like, I was watching it, and for me, it was just a very hard show to keep my attention. And not because I was expecting it to follow the usual superhero tropes or anything. It just, I just felt like it had just some real pacing issues, as far as just really getting to the point of what the story is about. And I agreed. I wish they had focused more on Luther and Diego, because, and those types of dynamics, at least in the episode, and then maybe they do further downstream, but it doesn't sound like they did. But, when I finally did get engaged with the story was when they were in that courtyard and they had that with all the siblings together, which,
oh dear.
Yeah, and they had to fight and stuff, and that's where, to me, for me, the show worked better when the ensemble were all together.
Right.
And I lost interest when the violin playing. It drove me nuts. I was just like, that whole sequence and stuff, I think it was in episode 2, was just, it almost lost me there. I'm like, just kind of boring. And I just, yeah, I mean, and so I probably will finish it, but, it's not like I'm aching to do so. I'll maybe watch something else, but, I'll get around to it, but I'm not going to binge it.
Right. And so to go back to Veronica's point about this first season being just introductions, that makes sense. In a way. And I think part of my problem, I actually don't think that there was a pacing issue. At least for me, there wasn't. It was more about, I felt like, even though I wanted more from each character, it felt very segmented. Not as bad as Teen Titans, segmented their characters and plot points and just really bothered the hell out of me. But, what Umbrella Academy did was it had like 75% of an episode, or maybe a little over 50% was dedicated to one person, really. And you got to see their perspective on everything and them coming into their powers. And that's where I think, to go back to Will's point, some of it fell apart for me because I liked them when they were all together, and it felt like they had to each go on these individual stories, or we had to learn more about them as an individual. So maybe season 2 will work better for me, because that's when it'll be really focused on them as a team. And I have to compare it to Doom Patrol, because what Doom Patrol did in its very first episode is it allowed one person to come into the team, Robot Man, And through his journey we learned a little bits about every single character, who's on Doom Patrol. And by the end of it, you not only knew where each character was, but you knew why they each needed each other by the end of that pilot episode. And it's very obvious on Umbrella Academy why they're a family. This is technically, they were all born on the same day. They share the birth date, and so they have sibling rivalry. And so it's just a different way of doing it. And I also keep looking at Guardians of the Galaxy, because that's another version of this story where you have a group of misfits all just randomly stumble upon each other, and before you know it, they're a team. And you learn in that first movie why these characters work well together and they have a common goal, even though they can butt heads. So, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And this team of misfits and the concepts that we talked about even earlier tonight with with Nerddom and Fandom and being working together and coming together because of the mutual the mutual strengths and weaknesses are there to help each other out to build a cohesive unit. And truth be told, I mean, Doom Patrol at its core was the first, at least in the comic book world, kicked this whole sort of idea off. And then of course there's been stories about how X-Men was sort of ripped off Doom Patrol, and then X-Men begot Gerard Way, who is actually tied to both of these series, but in the comic book world at least, were they do play well together. Like I said, I think each one of them has their strengths and weaknesses as far as these shows. And maybe if I had watched Umbrella first and then watched Doom Patrol, maybe I would have had a different vibe. But watching the Doom Patrol first, I think, to Sarah's point, I thought they did do a better job of just doing a narrative structure of telling the story through the eyes of Robot Man, and how all these individuals are do need each other in order to function.
Granted, we've only seen one episode of Doom Patrol, and just because like Netflix drops all of their season, and so I could have also just over binged.
No, but I'm glad you brought that up, because actually I did make a note that honestly it probably would have served this series, for me at least. It would have been better for Umbrella to be just come out a one episode a week kind of deal, because it would build up that anticipation and that I would feel like, oh, I can, give me something to look forward to. I think the binge model for some of these shows sometimes actually works against them. And for some people, I mean, it does for me. And so, I guess with Doom Patrol, especially the way it ended, now I'm sort of like, okay, I can't wait for next week, and also see how they introduce Cyborg into this whole crazy universe that they have started to create with these characters.
Considering I haven't seen Doom Patrol, I have nothing to compare it to, so I couldn't even begin to tell you like my opinion on that. What I try really hard not to do when I watch shows, though, is I really try to avoid comparing shows to each other, because that can ruin it for me. And so I try really hard to respect the vision of the creator or the writers or the people that bring the show, and try to not compare their vision to somebody else's, because sometimes people have the same vision and it just comes out differently. So when I finally get a chance to watch Doom Patrol, I'm definitely will have to separate myself because, you know, there are lots of stories that are similar to the dysfunctional family type. And I think the thing I like about the Umbrella Academy with the dysfunction is that it's so similar to what I grew up with in my family. That everybody was a matter of like, you just take care of yourself and you just forget about everybody else because no matter what, there was always going to be constant animosity. And that's what happens in these types of big families that I grew up with. Like, it's just me and my sister, my mom, but she had, you know, several other siblings and they all had a bunch of kids and it's just, and so dysfunction is like so second nature to me that watching the Umbrella Academy, I was dying laughing at some of the stuff that was happening and the way that they treated each other. The you know, screwed up dad. I mean, that was my grandfather. I mean, I love that man to death, but my grandfather was a jerk, you know? And so, you know, I think that's probably why I connected so well to the Umbrella Academy. Like, growing up in a family where you're expected to be a certain way, and because you don't live up to those expectations, you just are like, well, then screw it. I'm going to do whatever I want then. And you act out.
Yeah, I get your point about not comparing the two, and I think I joked with Sarah some time back. I was like, I'm gonna try my best not to do that because they both dropped on the same. They both, I was, you know, self-aware enough to know they both dropped on the same weekend. I can't I'll try my best not to compare the two, but and unfortunately I did, and not to say to be fair, you know. Umbrella Academy didn't connect with me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't that I didn't like it. I mean, it's not like I have like a visceral like, oh god, just get me away from this. It's more that, you know, again, I think for me, it would almost work better if I just spread out the viewing instead of trying to like view them all in a binge type of scenario. Cause I mean, you know, I think there's a lot of subtleties and a lot of the dysfunction that, you know, work really well in that series. That, you know, if I spread it out, then maybe I could enjoy it for what it is. Because for example, Doom Patrol definitely has this dysfunction. I mean, Robot Man and Dr. Timothy Dalton's character, the Chief.
That's what I say.
Yeah, the Chief. I mean, how he just messed with Cliff, who ends up becoming Robot Man, and tried to, you know, he had this tragic car accident where, I mean, Cliff was already just a messed up individual. I mean, he was this NASCAR driver who has this, you know, quote, this idyllic life, and then he's like over here is, you know, having an affair with his maid, and then he's racing on the track, and, you know, he like looks over and his wife is like hooking up with the crew chief for his NASCAR team, and, you know, completely causes him to lose focus. And then fast forward, spoiler alert, Veronica, and anyone who hasn't watched it, but, you know, then ends up having this massive wreck, and he ends up, you know, going to be with the chief, and we find out, you know, 7 years later that, what he thought was what led him into this situation was actually not, and how the chief was he was trying to shield him from what actually happened, and then, you know, through his journey, we get into Negative Man, and, you know, here's a guy who really does have it all, but he's a very tortured soul because he has various secrets in his life that he is dealing with, even though he's a hot stick jet test pilot, and then, of course, Crazy Jane, which has 64 different personalities.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
No, Crazy Jane woke up the show for me.
Yeah.
Like I was interested, and then Crazy Jane showed up, and she just steals that show. Like she's Veronica 2.0 or 0.64, because like you like snark, yeah. Crazy Jane just brings it, and that actress is great. Like I don't know. There was just something and then her chemistry with Robot Man. You saw the spark, and which was really odd. But I guess to go back to the whole comparing and not comparing thing, in a weird way, I feel like I was educated to constantly be comparing storytelling methods to one another, compare, contrast, and just because I think it's all derivative. I don't think there's really any original storytelling, like pure original storytelling, because storytelling is centuries old. Like, are you really going to tell me this first time anybody's ever told this story? Now, I do agree, like, everyone has their own vision of how to tell that story and what should occur in the way, and I do respect that. And I can also blame the programmers. Why have these shows drop on the same day if you're not going to expect people to compare and contrast and size to be like, it makes no sense. Right. One of the reasons why I think Cloak and Dagger hit the way it did for me last summer was because it was virtually the only show featuring comic book characters on at the time. Yeah. And so you didn't feel the oversaturation that I think part of the reason why it's like, oh my God, that's 10 episodes and I'm coming off of a week where all the heroes were on, and it's just, it gets to the point where you feel like you really are hearing the same story over and over again. So sometimes I think it's just poor programming, and the merchandising, I think at the start of the show, Veronica, you said it, like, this fandom has become a marketplace. And that's what we're seeing with these shows and the way they're being scheduled, and to the better or the detriment. But those
definitely.
Well, and Doom Patrol, actually, to your point, Sarah, like, touches on that in its very opening.
I didn't like that.
You didn't? I love that.
I self-reference.
I actually like that. Because it was very self-aware and very, like, hits on the very thing that makes your point for me here, which is that it is saturated, and so check it out for folks who if you do have the DC Universe or app, or thinking about it, use a free trial, watch the first episode or so, and let us know what you think.
Yeah, Will is just so trusting over these shows. Like, I Teen Titans still scarred me, and I'm very much cautious. I'm like, okay, that's the first episode. You were good. I don't know if they're going to continue that.
What I liked about Doom Patrol and even the Umbrella Academy is, both of these shows did a very good job of, like, okay, we're not going to go through the normal tropes that we've come to expect with all our shows, whether it's Arrowverse or whether it's Netflix, Marvel. We kind of know the beats at this point, that we can kind of, like, okay, we're going to have this, and this. And what I liked about both of these shows is that we're going to turn that upside down a little bit and not have the the archetype superhero heroes that we're used to, when these characters were more multidimensional in their first outing than what we have seen for some shows that have been going on for multiple years now.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the thing I think too that I really like the most about Umbrella Academy is that none of them are actually really superheroes. They're just people with powers who don't know what the hell they're doing. And I think that's what I liked so much about it. is that they're not these holier than thou, like, we're saving the world, except for maybe Luther, until he finally realizes that he's really kind of useless without really knowing what to do as his leadership role, He was only number one because he was the strongest and biggest, and then all of a sudden he becomes, spoiler alert, half ape man, and he's like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? I've been on the moon for 4 years for no reason, So I think that's what I liked so much about Umbrella Academy. It's just a bunch of completely, totally different personalities just trying to live their regular lives, and now they're being told they have to, like, save the world from an apocalypse, and they're all kind of, like, scratching their head.
Right.
And
right.
I think that's what I liked so much about this, that they didn't immediately jump into this, like, yes, we're superheroes, we're going to save the world, bam, 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 and that's what kind of got me so hooked to watch the entire thing in one, like, practically in one sitting.
Yeah. I mean, to go off of that point, I think it was more about saving each other, because, I mean, for them, in a way, the world can burn up as long as that family is protected, because that's all they've ever known. And part of the reason why there's so much resentment is because people started walking away from the family.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
yeah.
Orphans are always screwed up in the head.
And the sad thing is they're not really orphans. It was just the fact that their mothers were paid money for them.
Yeah. That makes
mean?
it so much better, Veronica. Your mother paid to get rid of you.
Right? Like, I mean, of course you're going to be screwed up. And let's give it to Mary J. Blige. She's pretty badass.
Yeah. I just could not get past it. Like, I'm like, really? I mean, I like her and the cop together in the donut shop was always funny. and then that episode with Klaus was really cool. But I just was like, really? What kind of money are they paying you to do this? Like, how did you get involved? Like, I really want to understand this whole, because nothing is spontaneous when it comes to casting. So it was very odd to see her do that.
I think she has a part in the creation of the show, though.
Yeah, that would make sense, because
I think that's why she's a part of it.
Right. Like, that would make sense, because if you're why stand on the sidelines when you can be a part of the fun and play like a very Men in Black type character. Like, that's all I could think about especially when they put the mask on. I'm like, oh my god, this is so funny. But yeah, like seeing her and a few other people pop up in and out of there. One of my favorite scenes actually happened very early on in the series, and I compare it to Deadly Class, and how Deadly Class ends one of their episode with a giant fight in a restaurant. The donut fight scene, the donut shop fight scene, Umbrella Academy, is pretty much on par. I understand why they had the blinking light. I'm never a big fan of that because it messes with my vision. but I mean, choreography in that scene was pretty on point. Like, it was very well done, and just to see a little kid do all of that was cool.
Yeah, that kid's pretty cool. The actor himself, he really makes you believe he's a 58-year-old man in a kid's body.
I was just going to say he really makes you believe that he's a douche, probably because he is in real life, because that kid has like been in all sorts of things these days. So, yeah. Well, going back to scheduling issues, there's another show that we have to briefly touch on. Supergirl returned this week.
Yep.
And Supergirl also will be on break again. And I just don't understand why why they keep doing this to this show. Like, part of the reason why I haven't liked season 4, part B, is because it's just been on and off, and I'm forgetting where we left off.
I've noticed that for some reason, every time they air an episode, then it's like returns in 3 weeks. I'm like, what? Why?
Yeah.
For no reason.
Well, there was the parent company. I think they were trying to actually not kill the show, because I think 1 week it was due to the Super Bowl, and then I think it was on last week, but the week before it was the Grammys. It was also on the parent company. So you don't want to cross air with the largest events.
I would have rather watched Supergirl than the Grammys if it had been on. Let me tell you.
Well, but that's us. But you don't want to lose.
Well, and I don't watch Supergirl. That's just how bad the Grammys were.
Yeah, I know. Sure.
And next week's the Oscars.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
With no host.
So, with no host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can virtually watch online, because Twitter will update as soon as people win.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But we did
you don't have to watch it.
We did shame the Oscars along with everybody else, as far as please put the cinematography and editing back on the show normally, which they actually end up changing their minds and doing, like we called it. So, but anyway.
I heard that they changed it back too.
Oh, did they? I
don't
thought the last I heard they were putting those awards back on commercial TV.
But, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well,
now it's so bad, CW, about your scheduling, that we're doing it now while we're recording. We're preempting our Supergirl talk because of crazy ass scheduling issues.
Yeah.
And it was especially stupid and stood out this week because it was a Valentine's Day episode.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Valentine's Day was last week. Why are we revisiting this holiday from hell? I just don't get it. And it just, I mean, yeah, it was an episode. They tied up loose ends, I guess, in a way, because you had the breakup between Lena and James.
Right.
You had, they finally listened to all of my complaints about Sam Witwer not being on, and they brought him back, and they released him from jail because of all my fan letters. It's just like he was a star of the first half of the season, and I've missed him ever since.
Yeah.
And Dreamer, I've got her suit, and so I was kind of, especially when I found out that we have to wait another 3 weeks for a new episode, I'm just sitting here like, why do I care? Where are we going with this? This is classic season 3 Supergirl storytelling. And I miss the storytelling that occurred this fall, because I felt the writers take risk. I'm not seeing any risk right now, except for maybe the Kara and Alex situation.
Yeah, well, the story, for me, it was the James Alina thing. I'm glad they're just putting that to rest, because I was getting very bored with that. The Agent Liberty, again, as you rightly put, that story still resonates. And so I was actually glad to see that back, because it again reinforced why, of the villains across all the Arrowverse this season, why Agent Liberty is one of the probably the badass for the quote unquote big bads that we've seen so far. Because just the way he is that cult of personality, and I guess I am freely admit that maybe I'm letting present day events color my perceptions, but this character of Agent Liberty is that he does leave out that cult of personality, and how he has developed his legion of followers, the Children of Liberty, who see it as their role and responsibility to protect the Earth from aliens. So that I'm glad they came back to that story point, because that was what made 4A very compelling to us when we were talking about it in the fall. So it's good that he's back. It does suck that they do have that, they won't be back again until March. So I thought that part of the episode worked. Kara and Alex, either this can go either very well, or it can end up being like Cicada on the Flash. It's just like, just end it already.
just we know that that they know. Yeah. She's Supergirl. Yeah. Get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope that they don't stretch it. I mean, I think I can only take a few more episodes with it going on. It made sense why they had to do it, given the situation. Mm-hmm. But, and it's kind of cool to really understand the depth of that relationship, because there are moments when Alex does feel like an entirely different person, because she doesn't have that memory of Kara being Supergirl. And how that difference, that small change, has this giant ripple effect on both a singular person as well as a relationship with another person. Yeah. And she even was treating John differently this episode, I noticed, which was odd. I'm like, wait a second, does she not realize that he's a superhero too? What does that mean? And why is that? So maybe a few more episodes, but at the end of the day, I want to figure out what's going on in the Soviet Union and how it's going to collide and become this big Supergirl versus Supergirl mess, so we can wrap it up.
Yep. Well, we won't find that out until after they take another month off, and they'll come back in like May and finish up in June.
Yeah, and it won't happen until 2040 for all I know.
Yeah.
Apparently a lot happens in 2040, but yes. We'll see.
Yes, we shall.
All right. Well, Veronica, as always, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show and give your very unique perception or perspective.
Well, I appreciate you always inviting me, because we all know I'm a little bit different. Oh, Will makes you, huh?
Why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you, Veronica?
They can find me on Twitter at nerdychicana, NERDYXICANA.
And Will,
yes, ma'am.
Where can our listeners find you?
You can find me at Will M. Polk. That's WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on SNN Nerd, or at SNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.